Welcome back for our second episode of growing fall gold raspberry cuttings. It's day 27. Was this burning of the shoot, the top shoot, my fault? I would think not. I think the transplant shock and the adjustment coming from that store bag from moist wood chips, not really sawdust, to this soil medium and the watering, whatnot, the differences in sun exposure and just changes in conditions were enough to cause a little bit of dying back at the top, but that seems to have all been remedied. As of day 27, it seems like the top shoot is recovering, and the second shoot has done really well. We're finally getting to see some of the structure in all of its glorious detail. Looks like some nascent developing supermarket vegetable. So I did a little bit of reading on the fall gold raspberry. There are many varieties of raspberry in the wild hills, in riparian zones, in California, in the mountains or whatever, in greater San Diego County and beyond. I've seen some blackberries, wild blackberries, but not raspberries, I don't think. So there's nothing going on between that third shoot from the top, the third node, all the way down to here, where you see the second to last one from the bottom is a little bit green and it seems to be developing. It's day 31. Phoenix rising from the ashes continues. That top node is recovering nicely. This second node from the top is developing the most, of course. It was the first mover. And it seems like this stick has devoted most of its resources to sending foliage out of the second and the third nodes. So we're seeing this triple leaflet, is that a compound leaf structure? So I don't know if this came from a primocane or whatnot. I did a little bit of reading about the various types of raspberries, and they have rhizomes, and that's how they spread underground. And they sent out these suckers, I think, and they only last for about 18 months. This is all far in the future for this plant. I don't know if we'll ever get there. Typically, I just want to show the beginning and the middle phases. I don't have a lot of space to get all the way to the end. But as you can see, the foliage is coming along nicely. It's a light green. It's not a dark green. And it may get a little darker as it matures, but as I was saying earlier, I send out these maybe adventitious shoots or suckers or whatever. Not too clear on what happens later on, but apparently these primocanes live for about 18 months and then they become Floricanes in their second year, and that's when the new shoots supposedly flower and grow berries. So I'm doing this watering, deep watering. I kind of ventured off schedule. I know I said previously in maybe this series first episode and maybe some sequel episodes of other series that I was going to water twice a month, but it seems like all advice for this plant as came from the back and both online say that you should do a deep watering once a week, that this is a thirsty plant. And my intuition at first was that maybe I shouldn't overwater. I don't want to cause root rot for those nascent developing roots that come out. But this is a relatively small pot and it seems like a very thirsty plant. I've noticed a little bit of data to suggest that maybe the once a week is a better schedule, or maybe do it like 3 times a month. That's every 10 days. Like with everything, it's not really scientific or statistically valid. You're just going to have to go by your own judgment depending on how hot and dry it is where you live. And currently, as of the filming of this little clip, it's February 2018. So it's been a little colder than January. We had a really warm and dry January with almost no rain. Then the nights started to cool down and the days, and it started drizzling a little bit in February. So that's a little bit normal. It's day 35. Growth is accelerating. What I just showed you earlier was just you check the water tray to see if water drips down in there and make sure it doesn't overflow, number one, and number two, you just want to make sure the soil's been wetted all the way through when you water. You do your deep waterings once a week or every 10 days or however often you want to do this. Obviously, if it were August or September, when it's really, really hot in San Diego County, I wouldn't want to wait 10 days or 2 weeks. Maybe even once a week is not enough. I'd have to do it more frequently in such a small pot. And I could probably let the bottom watering tray fill up at that point. Although this pot has a very small tray and it can overflow, and it's quite a nuisance if it just spills on everything and creates a big mess. So you can see there's continued development. Yeah, it seems like once a week watering is pretty good, and I'm not sure if these leaves will get any darker, but these are brambles. They're not just obnoxious vines that spread and curl on everything with tendrils. Same can't be said for some of the vines I've had in the past. They were just really, really high maintenance and hard to deal with on such a confined balcony. So it's day 39, and there's been smooth sailing in this series so far. We've had a cold February, and I expect the weather to warm up as usual quickly and become hot and dry again starting in March or April. And, you know, the typical San Diego County weather will ensue. It seems like these things are growing, but they're more bushy rather than viney, which is great. I like my plants to have a little bit of structure and a lot more vertical growth because I have all these plant series going on a balcony. So I'm wondering if the leaves will get any darker, but I've consulted the internet. I think the foliage for this species, or raspberries in general, just isn't very dark. It's not like those passion fruit vine leaves that I had in 2017 last year, where everything was just giant and very lush dark green. And that kind of affects the videography of everything too, because if you have a dark green leaves curling around everywhere all along this balcony rail in the background that's out of focus, then that sort of affects the coloring of the video. And this is winter, mid-afternoon sunlight, so that's kind of different from the videography that would be during the summer when the sun's more overhead. But regardless, this is making some good progress. I don't expect any roadblocks anytime soon. I haven't focused on fertilization. I just focused on getting the watering right. The soil's been fertilized many times prior to this series beginning. I'm using the same soil that's been, had a lot of stuff added to it, crushed vitamins for calcium carbonate and trace minerals, metals. I added a lot of chemical fertilizer in the past, and I'm not sure how much of that has been used up or broken down. I would assume it just stays in the soil. So the top of this stick is developing, and the bottom as well. I don't know where it's going with this little shoot at the bottom, but since it's a bramble, I think that it'll grow somewhere beyond parallel. It'll grow upwards, and that won't drag on the ground. There's nothing more annoying actually than having foliage drag on the ground and getting wet and then looking rotten, as it did with my Artemis Sinum plant from 2017 early on. So I'm doing another deep watering, and I'll do this about once a week. I think it's been maybe 10 days in this instance, but as long as the soil looks wet and it's not too hot and dry, then you're basically good to go. And I'm going to take this time to water some of my other developing plant series as well. So at the end of 2017, it turns out I was underwatering a lot of my plants, and just problems galore in general struck. So that stick you see behind is the mango, and it has little shoots, and they're green and they're getting bigger very, very slowly. It's been taking forever for that thing to resurrect. And the pot in front that's empty that I'm watering has a bunch of avocado seeds in it, and I know those things take a very, very long time to germinate, and the weather is still a little bit too cold, so that might take a while, but I'm hoping that turns into a new series as well. You got the Joshua tree and pineapple plant. So I just rotated that for the raspberry to see if the water tray is filling, and it takes several minutes.